Our next question concerns the possibility for a return to civility and even-handedness in American political life. Listen.
Hi, Dinesh. The Democrats are really willing to go to extremes, knocking Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gosar off committees. What is the way back from all of this? Is there a way back to a more collegial political environment?
Very good question. And in my opinion, yes, there is a way, but it's a slightly counterintuitive way. The obvious way to think about this is, and there are many conservatives who are singing from this choir, is that because the Democrats are going to extremes, we should not go to extremes. We should not do what they do. We should we should stand on principle. We should appeal to the better angels of their nature. We should say, hey, Democrats, don't go to extremes. Don't do this to us. This is actually lowering yourself. Well, they don't mind lowering themselves. They are trying to teach us a lesson. They are trying to essentially make us recognize that we are subordinate to them. And they are doing it because they have the power to do it. They have the majority. The majority does have the power to throw people off committees. They pick the people who are really threatening them, who are really speaking out, the people who are really effective at what they do, and they go, let's get Marjorie Taylor Greene, let's get Lauren Boebert, let's get Gosar. And what is the Republican leadership doing? Well, so far, not a lot. Now, in my view, the way to get civility back is to do the same thing to them. Because if you do the same thing to them, then they suddenly go, ooh, well, you know what? We don't like this. And we recognize that two can play at this game. So we are going to be a little more moderate or restrained in the way that we deal with the opposition, because the opposition will have its turn and then they will do the same to us. So I was very happy to read in The Hill an article, GOP eyes booting Democrats from the seats if the House flips. This is Kevin McCarthy. And he says very clearly, he goes, listen, the Democrats are going to need the approval of us if we get the majority to keep their positions in the future. And McCarthy says if we get in, we're going to restore Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene's committee assignments. And here I think the GOP needs to play hardball with these guys. And that is, we need to make it really clear right now that if we get the House, we're going to be throwing tons of Democrats off their committees. I would start with Maxine Waters, Ilhan Omar, Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and AOC. Now, I can obviously give reasons for all these people. If we're talking about Eric Swalwell, we have an obvious reason. This is a guy who has ties to suspected Chinese spies. And this is a guy, by the way, who's serving on the House Intelligence Committee. So do you need further explanation for why he should be kicked off that committee? Or take Adam Schiff. Here's a guy who's been on the Intelligence Committee, and yet he's been putting out himself knowingly disinformation. He's one of the chief public sort of authors and expostulators of the Russia hoax. And even as it became really clear that this is a hoax, this is a Democratic plant, Schiff has continued to dig in, continued to put out lies. But my point is this. A true exercise of power is even more effective if it doesn't have a rationale. You don't need a rationale. The Democrats have no real rationale. What? Paul Gosar put out some information in a kind of anime cartoon, and the cartoon is then interpreted as somehow promoting violence. Why? Because in the cartoon, you have a Gosar-type animated figure who's knocking out AOC. I mean, this is absurd. You don't need a reason. It's better without a reason. So what I would do is, step one, I would boot these five: Maxine Waters, Ilhan Omar, Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and AOC. But that's not the end of it. That's to warm up. You start up with the five, and then you go to the next five. So, in other words, you escalate on the Democrats. They always do this to us. So the idea here is not just they did two, so we're going to pick two. No, they did two, so we're going to do 10. And that's as long as we're in a good mood. If we're in a really bad mood, we might do 20. So and the same principle applies to other things. You want to pack the court by adding 4 people to the court because that's going to give you a majority. Well, when we have the power, we will add 37 seats to the court, and it's going to take you 40 years to be able to get those seats back. So the idea here is ultimately, and it seems like an escalation, but it's an escalation with a point. It's an escalation to tell the Democrats that they're dealing with a new, invigorated, and tough-minded GOP that won't put up with their nonsense. and that is going to respond to them in kind. Why? Because if we want to get to a more decent, even-handed, civil, less extreme America, ironically, the path to do that is to teach the other side, which is the initiator of the extremism, a lesson that they won't quickly forget.